Hey everyone, my name is Sara-Dawn and welcome to another episode of Friday Night Frights. Today we're going to be talking about what is considered to be one of the most haunted houses in England, the Borley Rectory. The Borley Rectory is a house located in Borley, near Essex, England. The term rectory is used to describe a home where someone from the church who is charge of a parish would live. The house is said to stand on an area which was once a monastery with a dark past. The story goes that in the 13th century, a monk fell in love with a nun at the monastery. The love was mutual between them, and with the help of the monk's best friend, they decided to elope and get married. When the church got word that the two were planning to break their religious vows and wed each other, they were sentenced to death. The monk was hanged on the property. The best friend was beheaded, and the nun was bricked up inside the walls of her convent, alive. This story is what lays the foundation for the hauntings at the Borley Rectory. Reverend Henry Bull became the pastor of the Borley Church in 1862, and he decided to build a rectory on the property of the old monastery to live in, since the property was owned by the church. He did this despite the warnings from locals that this land was haunted and cursed. The house he built was 3 stories tall and contained 20 rooms. There's also underground tunnels beneath the house that Reverend Bull never explained, and the only explanation anybody can come up with is that they were simply just used for storage. After he and his family moved into the house, Reverend Bull's daughters and servants often complained that they could hear mysterious noises, footsteps, and even see apparitions in the front garden. Reverend Bull believed that his daughters and the servants were tainted by stories from the locals, and that it was all just in their imaginations. Although it's said that Reverend Bull really enjoyed these stories and he started to use them to entertain himself. As well, Reverend Bull's son Harry also took these stories as just that, stories. Henry and Harry even built a small house in the front garden where they'd often sit to smoke cigars after dinner and watch for apparitions in the front garden. They often thought they saw a nun walking by, but they always just shrugged it off. Guests at the Borley Rectory would also claim that they'd see a nun in the front garden. Many believe it's the unresting spirit of the nun who was bricked up in her convent many years ago. Many believe that she wanders the front garden looking for her love, the monk. Others believe that she's angry about what happened to her and cannot leave Earth because of it. Reverend Bull passed away in the Blue Room of the Borley Rectory in 1892. Both his parish and the Borley Rectory were left to his son Harry. During Harry's time living at the Borley Rectory, he still often sat in the front garden, waiting for a clear apparition of the nun. During this time, paranormal events seemed to escalate, and many people claimed that they saw apparitions, and even Harry claimed he had seen the nun. Harry passed away in 1927 in the same Blue Room of the house that his father did. Reverend Guy Smith inherited the house from Harry, but only lived there for 1 year. It was said that he moved out due to the history of the house, and also the house itself was in a deteriorating state. In October 1930, Lionel Foister took over the Borley Rectory and lived there. He moved in with his family, which included his wife Mary Ann. This is when the hauntings went from being an entertaining experience to a terrifying experience. Not only did people continue to see apparitions in the property, but physical things started to happen as well. Windows would break unexpectedly. People would be locked in or out of rooms with no explanation. Items in the house would vanish, and often furniture would move all on its own. Mrs. Foister seemed to be the person who attracted the most paranormal attention. She claimed that on many occasions she had been touched by the ghosts, including being slapped and pushed out of her bed at night. She even claimed that the ghost almost suffocated her with a mattress while she was sleeping. Activity increased significantly, and Marianne was living a true nightmare. Messages began to be scrawled on the walls of the home, something straight out of a horror movie. These images are the real images of those writings on the walls of the Borley Rectory. Although many of it is unlegible, there are clearly messages that say, "Marianne, please help get," and "Marianne, light mass prayers." But nobody really knows what these messages mean. Soon, Harry Price, now known as one of the world's most famous paranormal researchers, became attracted to the stories of the Borley Rectory, and the Borley Rectory ends up being one of his most famous paranormal researchings. Harry Price's investigation of the Borley Rectory would not only become one of his most famous cases, but it would also set the standards for future paranormal investigators. Price's documented accounts of the Borley Rectory include hearing many noises that are unexplained, hearing bells chime without any explanation, and seeing physical objects move around the house. Price did believe that the house was haunted, but he was also suspicious of Marianne Foister, and the fact that many of the experiences only happened to Marianne or when Marianne was around. Price became fascinated and obsessed with the house and visited it very often in the 1930s. Eventually, the Borley Rectory was left empty. That is, until Price himself decided to move in. Price rented the Borley Rectory from 1937 to 1938. During his time living at the house, he held many seances to try and communicate with the spirits that lived on the property. During one seance, he allegedly made communication with someone named Marie Lair. She passed on the information that she had once been a nun in France, but left her convent when she fell in love with a man named Henry Waldegrave. Marie and Henry moved into a manor that once stood on the same property as the Borley Rectory. Shortly after they moved into this manor, Marie says she was murdered by her husband and buried in the basement. Price believed that this explained the nun apparition rather than the story of the monk and the nun who fell in love. And as long as her body was buried on the property, she would continue to haunt it unrestingly. In March 1938, 5 months after Price made contact with Marie, another spirit contacted him through a seance and said that the Borley Rectory would burn to the ground, and that after it burnt down, everything would be revealed. 11 months after this warning, someone else bought the Borley Rectory, Captain Gregson. While he was unpacking his things in the library, an oil lamp got knocked over and started a fire. Just as the ghost had predicted. The blaze spread quickly, and the Borley Rectory was gutted in flames. Price took this opportunity to have the basement area excavated in hopes to find the body of the nun. It didn't take very long into the excavation process before they found human bones. And it was revealed that these bones did in fact belong to a young woman, although they were unable to identify exactly who it was. The bones were given a proper Christian burial, in hopes to give the spirit the peace and rest she deserved in the afterlife. The remains of the burnt house were eventually demolished, but the legend of the Borley Rectory continues to be passed on from generation to generation. This house has gone down in history as one of the most haunted houses in the world. There are also many people who believe that the Borley Rectory stories are just that, ghost stories. And perhaps the people that had lived in the house, including Marianne Foister, were creating these stories simply for entertainment. However, that doesn't really explain Harry Price's experiences in the house. How did he know there was a body buried underneath the house? Could it have been just a coincidence? Let me know what you think. Is the Borley Rectory just a scary story, or do you think it's true? You can tell me in the comments below. I guess some stories are funner left unexplained, and we'll never really know if it's true or not. My name is Sara-Dawn. This has been Friday Night Frights, and I hope to see you on a Friday in the near future.